Thank you. Thank you so much. So staying alkaline in an acidic world, that is a challenge that we are facing increasingly. And in even younger age, when we consider that more and more children are born with illnesses where we think, hang on a second, how does a little baby have cancer? That's not the age group.
You can't hear you.
No? Is that on? It's on. Okay, sorry. All right, so we're facing increasing challenges when we consider the statistics where more and more children are even now born with severe illnesses where usually we would think that this isn't for them. This would be like at a later stage or stage in life, or when you are facing severe challenges that would impair your health. The problem is that we are now in our so-called civilized world immediately faced with so many environmental challenges. That's why the issue of environmental health is of a particular concern to Jentschura. And we consider that there is not only the singular cause of an illness, but it's the whole context we live in. And we will, of course, continue to live in it. We will not go and live in the woods, although I'm doing that actually with my dog. But not everybody has the chance and the willingness to do that. And so at Jentschura, we are concerned with thinking of ways where we can live in an urbanized and highly civilized, i.e. highly artificial context, but still stay stronger than that. And for us, that means to stay alkaline. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that and how we developed a very simple system to stay on top of the acidic challenge, i.e. to stay alkaline. Thank you so much for joining for this lecture. So first of all, we were thinking, what is health? There's a lot of definitions of what any particular illness is, and we go on and on feeling very, very smart about ourselves, meaning feeling in control of illnesses that really get the hold of us rather than vice versa. So we were thinking, okay, let's start with the vision. Let's not make an identity of our illness, but let's build an identity towards our vision of a healthy organism and a healthy life with a long-lasting and healthy quality of life. So health to us means a continuous independence or autonomy in our physical and mental capacities. So the body is just as important, or the mind rather, is just as important as the body for being healthy, because we have to make healthy choices, right? We need the right information to make healthy choices to stay healthy physically. We want to keep our body and mind at the highest possible performance levels. If we are compromising either of that, we will lose our capacity for getting healthy in situations of challenges. So we need to focus on health as a self-replenishing system. So the capacities of healing ourselves, or the self-healing capacity of the body, is an important aspect that also relates to alkalinity. And you will see why in a little while. The constant capacity of purifying and regenerating, that is something that the organism can do by itself. Today, with this focus on hygiene, we think that we always need to do something. Ideally, something chemical or something which is rather harsh in order to purify our body. That is probably coming from an historical age where we lived in very different circumstances, where there was a focus suddenly on germs, on viruses. That's from the age of the pioneer of medicine, who thought that they would get a grip on on things by focusing on hygiene, finding that single cause of one illness and eradicating that with acidity, basically, with quite brutal means. I think this historical heritage is something we have to reflect upon and see that this is rather brutal, and we have to come to a more gentle approach to take care of our organism and of our world at large. There is nothing to be combated. There's only things to be strengthened. That's what we believe at Jentschura. So if you think for 1 second again of what I said before about the self-healing capacity of our body, there's always oxygen involved. In previous decades, oxygen was used also as a disinfectant. But nowadays, that's become unpopular, or from the 70s onward, that's become unpopular for some reason. Maybe the reason is that we trusted more into extreme acidity to kill anything and everything. But we can also see that in alkalinity, where at the same time we have a higher oxygen level, germs and viruses cannot survive. All right? So the reason why alkalinity is beneficial for the human organism is that oxygen can be found within an alkaline context. Oxygen and alkalinity go together, while oxygen and acidity just don't go together. It's a very simple truth of chemistry. All right? So we need oxygen to have a little hook for our red blood cells for transporting micronutrients. That's why we start with the supply of minerals and nutrients. We need something to be transported to our cells for cell nourishment and for regenerating of our tissue and physical structures. That's the reason why we eat. That's why eating is good for us if we eat the right things. Right? When you ask people why do we eat, they say to live. So imagine how good your life is if you eat well. It is a very simple truth, and I personally, I'm a sociologist, and I'm intrigued by the question why, despite knowing much better, we still make the wrong choices. It doesn't make any sense, right? So we need our food, basically, to help us. So we don't have to make these choices all the time. We just say, okay, I am who I am. I am a fallen angel from paradise. I make the wrong choices, but let my food be smart for me, right? That's why I believe in this concept of what's called omnimolecular food. That means providing the full range of building blocks so the body can pick for itself. It's not a conscious process, right? It's something that the body can do by itself according to the keyhole and key principle. The body knows where the gap is and is able to recognize what fits in it. The enzymes do that for us, right? So with purification, i.e. elimination of toxins, we raise alkalinity. I don't think I have to explain anything more. As you eliminate acidity, your alkalinity level will immediately, be balanced, and as I just explained, then you can retain oxygen much better in your red blood cells. That is a very important information for any kind of deficiency for which maybe some or many of you, I don't know, are taking supplements. You discover that you're deficient in, I don't know, magnesium, iron, you name it, and you take supplements, and maybe you wonder why some of them are not working in the amount, or according to the amounts that you might be taking. And the key is oxygen. You need a little hook for the red blood cells to connect to those nutrients, minerals, to transport them to wherever they are needed, the brain, cell tissue, or even the bones. There is a bone metabolism as well. We tend to forget that and believe that osteoporosis is irreversible, but the bones do have a metabolism, and it's not only going one way, i.e. declining the mineral mineral substance within it, but it can go back as well. The key is oxygen, microcirculation. For that you need just moderate sports or brushing. I will show you that in a bit. With this simple system, we have now for 10 years been the supplier and an official advisor to the Olympic athletes of the Austrian skiing team, and who is in skiing or likes to follow the Olympics will know that they're up there. They're born in the mountains, they grow up on skis, and they really know how to use their body just for going down there, and it can be quite exhausting, right? But it's also a very healthy sport, and we are very happy to support them. So with this three-step system, the Austrian skiing team has some of the oldest athletes. That's quite unusual. Usually a top athlete is old at about 30. That's something crazy. But if you think like how they're really exhausting their physical resources, and if they don't really take the time or have the smartness to support their organism for regenerating, they really might be pretty worn down the knees usually, or if you think of professional runners or soccer players, they need to find a way to regenerate not only their level of, let's say, energy, but also their whole physical substance. And interestingly, you can compare this very high efforts of a top athlete to somebody who's been really sick for a long time. That's why we're drawing a lot of valuable insight from top athletes that can be applied for people who have a long history of severe illness, such as cancer or even neurodegenerating diseases, or severe excretion problems like an open leg. It's it can be compared just due to that amount of stress, the amount of energy that's going to waste from an ill body or the body of a top athlete. And we found ways to regenerate that. So I just want to show you a brief, let's say, image of where our products fit into that system, which is basically the system of the organism, right? Supplying your cells, eliminating acids and toxin, and absorbing oxygen. That's something that we're doing all the time. It's not anything that we invented. It's just that we somehow structured that to see what's happening in the body simultaneously, right? So you continuously need micronutrients and minerals for supplying your cells to replenish tissue function. You continuously eliminate. Our skin is continuously breathing. We are continuously breathing, taking in oxygen and eliminating carbon dioxide, right? That's a metabolic waste product. So there's a continuous taking in and eliminating. That's continuously or simultaneously going on. The urban air doesn't have that composition anymore, as most of us probably learned at school, where it was always said that there's 21% of oxygen in the air. That is no longer true. In the urban context, it's gone down to 18% or 17%. That is rather significant if you think of how much we depend on oxygen. So we were thinking that we must increase it somehow via the skin. There's also devices like for breathing, but we are always thinking for ways for the urban person who doesn't have time. We're always thinking of something that works quick without you doing much, while our products are, let's say, doing the work, right? You just have to apply them, eat them, and that's it. They're smart by themselves. And your organism is, of course, smart enough to filter and take what is necessary. All right, so this is a system. The blue colored is for increasing your oxygen. You need to raise alkalinity to keep the oxygen. That's why it belongs together, right? And of course, you always need for the oxygen and the red blood cells something to supply. It doesn't really make a difference if you boost just your oxygen, but then you don't have anything to be given to your cells, right? So that's why it's a system. All right? So just to show you how much we're surrounded by acids and how common that is in our diet, or especially also the diet of the younger generations or people who, just eat what they like. So uric acid from degenerating cells that don't have enough oxygen or that are not having the building blocks to last, they will just degenerate. From that, you have an increase in uric acid. A lot of that is just a natural process, nothing to worry about. But people who have a high meat consumption have additional uric acid, and that might just be a problem if elimination doesn't happen fast enough. I'm not saying don't eat meat. I mean, I have the blood type of O negative. I need to eat some meat now and then. I'm the hunter-gatherer type. I don't know if you have looked into that. It's a very interesting subject to see what diet is suitable for you according to the blood type. So, but make sure you eliminate and you assist your organism with that. So acetic acid, that is superbly dominant, I believe, because of bread consumption and sugars, artificial sweeteners, right? So that's one of the most common acids. And if you think about how you may cleanse your water kettle, it's maybe with acid or citric, or with acetic acid or with citric acid. They are among the most aggressive, right? So, So lactic acid, that's of course also superbly common. And that is also a reason why stress is so unhealthy. Stress is so unhealthy because it sends constant impulses to the muscles to contract. So there is lactic acid coming on the one hand from constant contraction of the muscles, and then secondarily from missing impulses for relaxation. If that would kind of be in balance, there would be enough time in the interval to deal with the lactic acid. And that too needs an impulse, interestingly. It's not just the absence of the flight mode or the fight mode that will make us relax, but that too needs an impulse, and it can be trained, which is why yoga is very beneficial. Carbonic acid from insufficient breathing, again, something to do with stress, of course, but also people who just sit, they don't really breathe deeply. So again, our air is composed with a lesser percentage of oxygen, and then additionally, we don't breathe enough. Imagine what that does to cell nourishment. It's a vicious circle, I would say. So carbonic acid increasing. Oxalic acid from chocolate. Imagine how many people just have a bar of chocolate here and there. So I really just named those that are really significant. All right? So, and if you are asking yourself, like, what's the strategy, I can't live without that. I can't, I just need that, Would the strategy be better to eat a little bit every day or to eat a lot in the weekends? What would you think? Just raise your hand for the first option, have a little bit every day. Who thinks that's the right option? Okay. And who believes that it's better to indulge in the weekends? Okay, that's the minority, but I have to encourage the minority in that point. What is interesting is the interval for dealing with acids. Right? So if you have a little every day, the more dominant aspect is to have it every day. So you're constantly having to deal with acids. While if you indulge in the weekends, you have 5 days to deal with it. If you live healthily the other 5 days and go to work and move and clean your windows, have just a natural active lifestyle, So I mean, don't overdo it if you embrace that strategy with indulging in the weekends, but for dealing with acids, that's probably the smarter strategy. All right? And maybe that's even more enjoyable. Depends. All right, so enough of the acids, but so you see that this is really significant, It's not something that's just coming from acids by themselves, like when you have the dressing for the salad, but it's coming from many, many foods. And our body is trying to eliminate toxins, right? That's a natural process. It's an element of our health that we have the capacity to do that. So the kidneys, of course, are a very important organ for flushing out toxins. Intestine, of course, metabolic waste products after digestion. The lungs for carbon dioxide. The skin, of course, our largest helper, let's say, in the elimination of toxins due to the very simple process of osmosis, meaning a higher alkaline concentration in the bath water or however you want to apply that, and a higher concentration of acids inside. So there will be an exchange to harmonize that concentration of alkalinity outside and acidity within the body. It's called osmosis. It's nothing you have to believe in, it's just something that happens, right? And the mucous membrane, something very important. If you're constantly sniffing your nose, or the opposite, you have dry eyes, take care of what's going on with your head, right? Try to remember that gluten intolerance isn't only something for celiacs to be remembered, but it is having a very damaging effect on the nervous system as well. All right, so you have some symptoms with your head. Always think of the connection to your neurons. So the effort the body is making for eliminating toxins or also for neutralizing them with physical substance is because our blood always has to stay in that range of 7.25 to 7.45. 7.25 is already a risk, let's say, because if red blood cells start clogging, others are joining, right? So there might be thrombosis or a stroke that's coming from this lower level of the pH value of the blood. And if you want to use the kidneys for excretion, the substance that's being excreted can pass only at a pH level of 4.4. Anything below that cannot be excreted and will be retained in the body. All right, nothing goes unnoticed. Everything has to be neutralized. So we neutralize everything with minerals that are part of any physical structure. Even those that might not look like mineral, but they're all building blocks of our skin, of our organs, and in our blood and lymph there is an alkaline buffer for dealing with acids. And if the buffer system of the blood is finished, we use our bone structures, skin, that's the aging process. That's setting in then. It's like a subsistency level, let's say, for alkalizing. It's going from the very available sources, like in the blood or the skin, to more severe and more difficult to be regenerated structures such as the bones. So that's why after menopause, especially women have to look for their osteoporosis. Men can also be affected by osteoporosis, but of course, as you all know, especially women. Because their excretion buffer, the period, finishes. So acids and toxins are being kept inside and have to find different ways to be neutralized immediately. So you need to assist your organism by using the skin to eliminate. So an example for men, of course, is the most easily accessible platform, let's say, of available minerals. That's the hair and scalp. In evolution, a man could live without hair because the hair is one of the very few body parts that is not a tool at the same time. We cannot really live without fingernails because it's tools, right? We wouldn't have a chance for surviving. But personally, I think that men look good even without hair. But it's better to keep them because it's a symptom of how your mineral level looks like on the inside, all right? That's a typical way, by the way, of older athletes. This is a football club in Germany from Bayern Munich. I don't know who is into soccer, but it's one of our strongest football team, and these are the seniors, and they all look like that. They're not older than 35, 38. It's amazing, yes. No, I'm from Bayern Munich. Oh, are you? Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for joining. Special welcome to the soccer fans of Bayern Munich. Thank you. All right. So there you see shingles. That's shingles. And the body shows you how it wants to overcome an emergency. It's an excretion, right? And what we think we need to do is to push it back, just to have the skin look better. We put creams, but what we're really doing is pushing the acids back inside, while we should assist our body in what it's trying to do anyway, right? Our organism is rescuing us. Our organism here is trying to push toxins out of the body for protecting the vital organs. Imagine underneath, there's the heart, the stomach, the kidneys on the back, right? It's the thorax. So that is something superbly important to support elimination and not oppress it. That's very important. So after only 7 days of alkaline treatment, that got much better, while he was already fighting for 2 months, right? With no success, but with worsening pain and worsening acidity. So within a very short time, if you support what the organism is trying to do anyway, if you support elimination, then you have rather quick results, and I understand that in an urban setting, that's what we need. And why not? The body will benefit from a fast improvement. So this is an example for how the oxygen works. Oxygen, yes? I will show you in 1 minute, if that's all right, okay? Thank you for your question. We'll come to that in a very short while. So when the body is affected by toxins, like here in the skin through toxins that in a very concentrated manner are being pushed out there, then in that acidity, as I explained before, you don't have really enough oxygen for these affected and severely, almost wounded cells, you can say, this almost wounded tissue to regenerate. And you will not wait, until you overcame this after 2 months. You have to do that continuously. The skin is trying to support elimination, but for that it needs to be functioning. So you need to supply some oxygen in order to give a little hook, as I explained, for the red blood cells to transport micronutrients for cell regeneration while you're sick. That's even more important in these situations of emergency. So there is excretion, but there is also a structural damage, meaning the body is using up its own alkaline resources in the skin. and therefore significantly changing how that looks. Right? Every time our alkaline-acid balance is under distress, it will affect either the skin, that's obviously very visible, that's why immediately, we are going and trying to do something. It's less visible in the bones. But of course, as I said before, now families are much more conscious about health because now even children are affected, seriously affected, and that affects, of course, also the entire economic situation of a family. So we're quite happy to have these results again with alkaline bathing. I will explain in a minute how that works. But also alkaline nutrition for rebuilding the skin and for helping the kidneys to flush out toxins, because the kidneys also need alkalizing potential to just get over that barrier of 4.4. So while there is excretion symptoms, let's say, of random causes, there's also what we call a metabolic biography. We change during our life, our metabolic processes and our ways of excreting toxins and acids change. So to promote elimination and to promote oxygen supply and nutrient supply for cell replenishing is also linked, for example, to the menopause or in general to the metabolic biography that can also change after chemotherapy. It's not limited to that, it's just one example. Hot flushes, it's something that cancer patients during chemotherapy experience. Weight gain, depression also as the incapacity to synthesize certain hormones that are only being synthesized in alkaline surrounding. That is a very important component. All right, so osteoporosis and hair loss, depletion of minerals, rheumatism, that's a depositing of acids in the form of crystalline structures. That's why rheumatism is painful. It's the micro crystals from deposited toxins in the tissue what hurts, and the acidity as such that is sending nervous signals of pain. And heart attack from the clogging of rigid red blood cells and lack of oxygen supply to the heart muscle. That can be seen, fortunately, in earlier stages, if you have that idea to have that checked, if there are certain areas that might be affected by decay of cell tissue. It can be seen in the color compared maybe to feet blackening of diabetic patients or heavy smokers. Right? That's lack of oxygen supply and therefore lack of nutrients to rebuild cell structures. So this is an example. We had the pleasure of advising a team going to the Mount Everest. They did that this year, and they were training for it last year because they were at about 50, 55, which for mountaineers and for that endeavor is something where you would want to train, but everybody should train for something like that. Of course, that's not something you just go about doing. You don't go there out of enthusiasm and survive that, but you need to prepare. So the left side during the training phase shows why people after some kilometers were already exhausted. They could not generate energy, and the cellular energy again needs a lot of oxygen. The mitochondria, I don't know if I'm becoming too complicated here, but that's something you might want to look up. Mitochondria, that's a small component of our cells that is dependent among some other substances, but mainly dependent on oxygen for producing our own cellular energy. That's a different kind of energy if you compare that to the insulin roller coaster that you get from simple white bread, the simple carbohydrates. That's causing a roller coaster for the insulin, upsetting your energy levels. And with oxygen, you have the capacity for any cell, not just the blood cells, but for any cell with the mitochondria to produce your own cellular energy. That's again why yoga or periods of fasting and of detoxing are very valuable and energizing, because your cellular energy level is boosted by that. So we have 6 people actually with this before and after picture. It's all very similar. Here you have, can you see that? It's like a crystal structure. It's really happening, right? It's not a mistake in the picture, but this is a crystalline structure of toxin being neutralized to this crystalline salt structure. The kidney can never excrete that. That would actually, pile up because these substances, they associate. And that would be gallstones, or that would probably, if you continue having a diet where you would form this kind of crystalline structure, pile up to some kind of stone, gallstone or kidney stone, since that cannot really be excreted. So after 2 months of supplying acidity, of detoxing, i.e. raising alkalinity, and supplying nutrients, the blood became much better. Here, the difference is that these blood cells are free agents. They're free agents. Even the way their shape is, here you see that it's like a brittle membrane. It's not permeable because even the cells, are closing up from acidity. So they clog, they're rigid. That's why there is also with acidity a sensation of cold feet or cold hand. That's exactly what's happening in the peripheral organs. And as you improve that over a period of time with alkalinity, oxygen and micronutrients, the red blood cells recover, they become flexible, they can actually do the logistics for transporting oxygen and nutrients to the other cells in the body, right? So if you have your blood checked and you see something clogged, you have to do something for your alkalinity, but also for your oxygen. So in acidity, blood cells clogged, wrinkly, unpermeable membrane, fungi and crystals. I showed you that these are these alien structures in between the red blood cells, and you have a low supply to the cells because there's no transportation, no sufficient transportation to the cells, and therefore also for muscle cells, how can they function without oxygen and without nutrients to replenish themselves constantly? So they were not really bathing in the bathtub. While they were training, they were wearing some textiles that we developed, particularly for athletes, but also for people who either because they have to stay in bed or they're immobile, they can't bathe all the time, it just wouldn't be possible. So we developed a range of textiles that can be soaked in alkaline water and be applied at night with a warming bottle. There's even a compartment for the warming bottle. I mean, we thought of everything to make it very easy on everyone who can't be bathing all the time or doesn't have a bathtub or is immobile to do that. So these people who climbed up the Mount Everest, they had alkaline cuffs. I will show you that. It's something very easy. And that's also soccer players who are wearing these alkaline cuffs underneath their protection cuffs. We have a team that is now becoming more successful with this method, just because their supply in alkalinity, their supply of oxygen to the muscles is maintained. So they outlast the other team. It's happening. We're happy and they're happy. And the others are not so happy. Excuse me? It's a soccer team. Or it's a professional team, yes. I hope you will not put it in the news, because we have no official contract with them, so I don't know if I can advertise with them. But it has a 0-4 in the end. I cannot say more than that. You will Wikipedia that. All right? Okay, so as you alkalize and increase the chance of retaining oxygen with your red blood cells, then you need nutrients to be transported, as I explained. And it's not that you must never eat anything acidus again. There's a balance. Which organ needs acidity in our body? The stomach, yes, right. And that's a superbly acidus level. It's going down to 1.9. Imagine, I mean, that's superbly acidus, and the stomach needs it to digest proteins. So, of course, our body is made up also of proteins. So imagine how important it is to keep acids out of our body. If you just think of how proteins are being digested with acidity in the stomach, it's very logical, right? So we created these foods. It's food. It's not really supplements or medication. It's just food, because we believe that from food the body will select what it needs. So I believe these are the regular criteria of selection for almost anybody who is exhibiting at this wonderful fair, WholeLifeExpo. So we hope to fulfill these criteria as well, with GMO-free biological quality. And it can be tolerated even by highly sensitive people, by people who are very sick or young children. That is tolerated by them as well.
Does that contain wheat?
No. 0. All right? It's just buckwheat, quinoa.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But it's a porridge. I wondered what that was.
Yeah. No, it has only buckwheat, quinoa, and giersch. Is that what it's called? Giersch. Hirse. Does anybody speak German? It's no oats, no wheat, none of these, no gluten, exactly. So it's none of the, let's say, typical cereals. They're just not in there. Millet. Thank you so much. Millet. That's it, yeah? All right. They're very mineral rich, and they are also having iron. We are always kind of looking for iron, because there is this very close relation, of course, with the oxygen in the red blood cells. It's just, that thing we have about iron, but it's particularly in the millet. Thank you. All right, so the acid-alkaline balance within our diet, 20% to 80%. So it doesn't hurt if you have your morning coffee, but you should have an alkaline buffer to compensate for, whatever acidus you have. It's not, it doesn't harm you. You even need a slight amount of acidity. All right, so you remove acids and toxins via the skin. This is what I mentioned. These are the cuffs for people, let's say, who are in the airplane. That's something convenient, because the cabin pressure does something to your microcirculation. The cabin pressure is pushing back microcirculation, like with the divers. The higher the pressure, the more the blood is being pushed in. The micro capillaries, they just, they're just not tolerating that high amount of pressure. So blood circulation in the peripheral tissue would slow down, less oxygen, therefore more carbon dioxide, because your skin, of course, will keep breathing, it will keep exchanging. And that's the good news in the sense that the process of osmosis, i.e. the exchange between acidity and alkalinity, will still work, right? That's why for flying, I would say these are essential, and also for people who are either sitting a lot or doing excessive sports. It's that range, where that is a very convenient way of detoxing. They're invisible, they just disappear, underneath the clothes. You can also wear them here at the arms. Some people have problems from using the computer with their nerves here. It's called the carpal tunnel syndrome. I don't know if that exists in this country, but yeah. Yes.
Very common here.
Yeah. Yeah. Very common in the civilized world. I wonder if we are not really underdeveloping by now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's what's happening, and we have to redefine our ecological niche, and that's our contribution.
The human body is not meant to be still
That's very true. Yeah.
all day long.
That's very true. So the skin, our largest assistant in eliminating, and therefore we should really unblock our pores and activate our glands, because our glands are excreting the liposoluble toxins, and our sweat glands are excreting the water-soluble toxins. So we need to keep that open and keep that active, right? So no acidic body care. And personally, I believe nothing that really stays on the skin. I don't know. I don't believe in it. It's all blocking, basically. And no corticoids. Corticoids, that's substances within creams that are oppressing excretion. The skin will look good afterwards, but acid's being pushed back. And we believe that acids should be drawn out, all right? So that's the bathing salt you asked about. It's creating a pH level of 8.5. That is identical to the amniotic fluid in the mother's womb during pregnancy. So it's something that we are geared, to respond to. That was our elimination method naturally while we were, or before we were born, while we were growing in the amniotic fluid. We need to brush because we need to increase microcirculation, open up the pores, but especially for the microcirculation, the brushing is very valuable, because microcirculation is going up to the very peripheral layers of our skin tissue, and the more contact we have between the blood and the exterior, where we have the alkaline bathing bath water, the more exchange can actually happen. Again, it's pure mechanics, let's say, of our intelligent organism. So this process of elimination starts after 45 minutes. It takes 45 minutes for the skin to become, really, let's say, soaked in alkaline water, for the glands to activate, to have the direction of drawing out. That just takes some time. But if you consider how many years we've been acidous, I believe 45 minutes, or then if you want to make use of what you started, you want to stay in the bathtub maybe an hour and 15 minutes, to have half an hour of real elimination, then that could probably be tolerated. And it has a self-moisturizing effect because, as I said, the sebaceous glands are also being activated. So this formula, compared to others, you can stay for a long time without having dry skin, but as the baby that's just been born has a wonderful skin. It's the imitation of the amniotic fluid. So there are some other textiles that could be applied at night for relief of the legs, of swollen legs, just to show you some options. Again, the cuffs. And the lymphatic system, of course, is very important. We've been talking about the blood, but they need to be used as well. And for the lymphatic nodes underneath the armpits, we have these cushions, and that's a very big helper also with breast cancer, because you need to use the neighboring regions, not the affected regions, but the neighboring regions for expression to protect the tissue that's already being affected. That's a very helpful invention. All right, so for the microcirculation, and we have this shower gel, organic, and alkaline, of course. So we're trying to pick up on the habits of the urban person, really. And if you have residues such as the crystalline structures that I showed you that might pile up as kidney stones, or other residue that might pile up as cellulite, you need to dissolve that before it can be excreted. And that's with a T. All right. Yeah, I believe I showed you our system, and that we're trying our best to invent very easy ways to do the work for you. Right? Thank you so much, and I wish you, and questions at the booth if possible. 1 to 8. Okay, one question.
One has to do with your porridge there. What is it made of?
It's millet, buckwheat, and quinoa. And some dried fruits that are very low in acidity, okay? But just to give it a nice taste. Thank you. Thank you again. Have a good day. Thank you.